Yeah, and this is Lacy. Lacy's in LA and plays violin, and you compose as well and write.
I do.
And Megan's here in Nashville, and Megan's a percussionist too, and Megan writes also writes lyrics, and Hope is in Hawaii.
Yeah.
You were in Asheville, North Carolina, for a little
Yeah.
while, weren't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Evacuated from the volcano.
Yes, we
Um,
did. Yeah. Yeah. We were there for a little over a year, during which I started another band, and then we got back last October.
okay.
Yeah.
And the whole idea with this is just really to have a conversation about music, art, life, love, whatever. And for me, it's been something I've always enjoyed, just learning people's stories, and then other people can tune in and hopefully get something out of it. So yeah, Hope and I met probably, I don't know, probably early 2000s in Portland, Oregon.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
that right? Was it from African drumming class or
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right, huh? Was it at the gym?
Dishman Community Center?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you were one of the nicest guys to me there for sure. Like
Oh,
one of the most
thanks.
welcoming, it was a
Oh,
little intimidating, like
likewise, it was intimidating. Yeah, there was a lot of testosterone.
skill level for sure, but testosterone level was a bit intense. Yeah. I
Yeah,
really appreciate you. Yeah.
and you were the only woman drumming there, which it was awesome, and I've always enjoyed your drumming. And so Hope has played for many years with a band called Medicine for the People, right? Not going
Yeah.
Medicine for the People,
Right.
and I want to you all to share your stories more. So that's how we met, and Lacy and I met here in Nashville. Lacy's in LA, and she was here, and she came and played with a songwriter who I'd been playing with, named Raquel Telfer. And then Megan and I met here in Nashville. Megan moved here almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, and we've played a lot of music together. She got my name from somebody and was looking for doing some sort of music from somewhere else, and she found me. So anyway, we can just go around. I'd love to hear about your just how you all got into music. If you have other things you do as well, just want to hear about you all. So who wants to go
Awesome.
first?
Yeah. Who wants to go first?
Go for it.
You want me to?
Go ahead,
Lacy,
Lacy.
go for it.
All right. I'll do it.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't choose it. I got pushed. I don't want to say pushed into it, but it was just always in the family. So I kind of started when I was 3. I was handed a violin and it worked. But I was surrounded by piano as well. I grew up in the South, like I think some of us. And
You said in
I grew up,
Mississippi?
yeah, Mississippi. So
Whereabouts in Mississippi?
it's called New Hebron. There's like 400 people that live there. It's very small. So it was church, a lot of church, so that's kind of how I got my start.
Uh,
And singing, recitals, and my brother played fiddle, so we did like a little duo for a few years. My grandmother on piano. It was very cute. We traveled. And yeah, just like a tour, little family band.
that's cool. You ever
And
find yourself at a place in North Carolina called a Polyrosa? Just by the way.
I don't think so, no, but if I'm ever there.
I think it burned down, but when I was a kid, I remember going and hearing fiddle music. Sorry. Anyway, keep going.
Well, we weren't that. It was like Alabama, Mississippi.
Uh,
We did have y'all heard of the Country Boy Eddie show? It was like a satellite program. We did that.
mm,
But and then I went to, college. I was like, well, I guess I'll do this.
so
And
was there a certain point where it like just you knew like this is what you're gonna do?
not real. I don't know. It was just always, it's like brushing my teeth. It felt weird to not do it.
Yeah, and
And
and you play like that. I mean, I mean that in a really positive way. That it's just very natural, and I love how you play. Um,
yeah, that's very sweet.
and
But
one thing that I think is maybe not as common with the way you play is that I think from what I know of you, I think you're a great reader, but also can really improvise too.
yeah, I guess that's the Southern roots I got from Because I went to conservatory. I was like regular, you know, like the whole classical thing.
Uh,
I was actually told to stop fiddling by my teachers. They're like, I could tell you've been playing that fiddle music. But I just kind of fell into it. Went to college, still doing it, you know.
yeah, and Lacy's in LA, and well, let's come back to what you've been doing pre-COVID, and then we'll go to what everyone's doing now. Hope, you wanna share your story a little bit now?
Sure. I can relate to Lacy a little bit. I'm also from Kentucky, so a little bit southernish, although we are happy to be above the Mason-Dixon line. But yeah, my roots are in that area, and I also was in like a church choir. I was in a great school choir, that type of thing. But when I found the drum, I was like a teenager, and the first time I ever heard it, it was a friend of mine, and he was playing a djembe, an African djembe, and he was playing in a circle with someone playing a didgeridoo and somebody else playing another style of African drum, and there was a gong. So it was this world music ensemble, but it was casual. It was in the living room, and I was totally blown away. Instantly, I wanted to play that kind of music, and I'd never seen anything like that before, having grown up in Kentucky, especially. Yeah. And so having said that, I will say though, when I was in like 6th grade, I did tell my parents I wanted to play the drum. And so they signed me up for like some drum kit classes, you know, with sticks and a plastic practice pad. And I was like in a little closet with this teacher that was weird and like an uncomfortable vibe with this old man, you know, and I was like, this is not my scene, you know, actually. So yeah, when I saw the African drums and these hand drums and this world percussion, that's when I actually got super inspired, and I got my first African djembe within a month or two of that moment, and then literally played every single day from that day on for at least the next like 3 years. And I would just go for the next 2 years straight. I went every day out in the forest and played by myself with the trees, and I just felt this draw to it, and I didn't have any formal training other than that original friend brought me to Omega Institute, where I met Babatunde Olatunji, and I did like this intensive with him, this short intensive, but he taught all the basics, and so I understood the basic drum language and the basic drum sounds from a West African perspective. That has been the foundation ever since for me. So that was my kind of beginning of just, you know, falling in love with the drum and then building my own relationship with it. And then I started to see like drum circles around campfires, and you know, and I was very taken by that and inspired by that energy and just the movement of spirit through that. But it was really, when I moved to New Mexico, I met a woman who had started a women's drum group. And so I came to it just, you know, being inspired about this idea of playing together. And then 5 months into it, she says to me, okay, we have a gig. And I was like, no way. Like, I am not looking to get on stage. Like, that is not me. I'm here to play with you, sisters, because you're awesome. But I don't ever see myself as being a performer. And it was really interesting because it took a moment, but she was like, we need you, you know, you've been here. And then she kind of said to me, you know, like, when we get up on stage, like, it's a prayer, like it's something we're doing to like offer in a beautiful way to help, and the healing energy of that for the people that we're playing for. And then once I aligned with that, I really had to breathe deeply into that. That's when I felt like it was something I could do, because I never wanted to have that type of attention on stage and didn't feel like it was just who I was. But then when I thought of, oh, okay, I could do this to help, you know, inspire and uplift people. If I stay, you know, focused on that energy and that frequency, then that feels, you know, comfortable for me. And so that's actually what got me onto the stage for the first time. And of course, being in a group of women felt much safer to me of a place to start, and feeling more confidence like that until, you know, a couple bands later when I finally started working with men. So, and then that took off on its own journey and story that got pretty big. So yeah, there's a lot to be said about that, but that's my beginnings.
Okay. And I want to, both of you, I want to follow up on that, but Megan, how did you get started with music?
Yeah, so we always had sort of arts and music and stuff in the family. Most of my family are drummers. My dad, his brother, my mom's brother was a drummer, my older brother. So it was kind of inevitable. And I was really excited to start drumming. And when I was in elementary school, they were like, "You're too young to be in the band." So I started on violin for a couple years. And then when I got to junior high, then I was like, "Nope, I'm going to play drums." So started doing that. Did like the school thing. I played in all the orchestras and school bands, and then did, marching band and drumline in high school. And we like competed on the drumline circuit and did all that stuff. And then, yeah, I didn't play for 15 or 16 years and never intended to stop playing. But as a drummer, when you live in apartments, there's not a lot you can do unless you have somewhere to go do it, right? So, yeah, and then I finally was like, okay, I need to make this happen. I need to get back into music. So I went to a community college in California, Cuesta College, and then went through the program there and was terrified, like, 'cause I hadn't played in so long, like, maybe I can't do this anymore. But it was like, it's like nature, like Lacy was saying, like it's in you. So, and then I ended up miraculously going to Berkeley and just finished that up 2 years ago. So to learn all about songwriting, got my drumming, going a
You
lot
focused on
better.
songwriting at Berkeley, is that right?
I did, yeah, that was my major, and then my principal instrument was drum set. So
I still haven't heard any of your songs. I know they're good.
It's
Yeah.
it's tough because I'm not a singer, so I felt for a long time like I was kind of writing for the trash can, like, what am I going to do with this unless somebody's going to buy it? And I'm not like very poppy for the most part. So unless somebody's going to buy this, what am I, I'm kind of writing for the experience. But I finally found some people to collaborate with where it's like, okay, you sing this. This is great.
Mhm. Nice. Hope, you said something, and I'm wondering if Megan or Lacy had any experiences like this. You said you found yourself, you expressed interest in drums, and your parents said, okay, and we'll get you lessons. And you said you were in a small room with an older man, felt awkward and just uncomfortable. Did you all, Megan and Lacy, do you have experiences like that as well?
Definitely.
Go ahead.
Go.
I
Megan?
didn't. We
Uh-huh.
didn't have. I didn't do any kind of private lessons until went back to school as an adult. So, yeah.
Lacy, what were you saying?
I definitely remember when it was my first, I had a fiddling teacher, right? Me and my brother. And I do remember I would put my back to this guy because he was like this older man.
Huh.
And for a while, I think we had to get me a new teacher because he just couldn't he couldn't do it. And I wouldn't look at him, I wouldn't talk to him. I would have my grandmother translate to like very bizarre.
I wonder,
I do remember.
as as someone, I teach a lot of kids, and I never want to be that person for sure. But I'm just wondering, like in general, if it would have been uncomfortable regardless, an older man teaching, or is it some of it just a personality?
For me, I think it was very specific. I don't think I would have been intimidated by you, Clifford. I think it's a frequency, and I do think, young girls, everyone, let's just be honest, we're sensitive. Human beings are sensitive people until we like either turn that off or are culturally like programmed to turn that off. But especially, I would say young girls, women in general are very empathetic and sensitive, right? So, that energy, I feel like it was very unfortunate that I ended up with this particular man because I really wanted to drum and I really loved it. Having said that, I was in Kentucky where there wasn't, African and hand drums were very rare there until I found this moment when I broke through, and they actually opened this amazing African drum store run by an African man from Burkina Faso who had master drums and had a family relationship with that area. And so that was an amazing thing for Louisville, Kentucky at that time to, begin that. So, so there's a combination of things, but I do feel like, there's a piece to all of this that I really, look at and acknowledge, like as women musicians, as that the music is a voice, and it's one of the most potent voices because it not only transforms the mind, but it also can transform the spirit and soul of the listener, right? Because you're using frequency on melody with sound and rhythm, not just words, and putting all these things together, it becomes so potent. You know, so I feel like, you know, that sensitivity when we're opening as girls to begin to learn these things and to express these things, we really want to be held in a safe container, right? In an open-minded space that that feels, you know, relaxed and also, yeah, safe on so many levels, right? As well as encouraging, because we also know that girls and women, we have been battling against having our voices shut down on a global scale for centuries. And so that's real, even though it's in our subconscious, it's not necessarily at the forefront of what we're thinking about. We've been dealing with the media over-sexualizing women and girls and how that influences our entire culture. So when we, you know, expand and open up our voices to express ourselves, we really want to create a nurturing environment, because we really want to hear the voices of women to come back into balance with the masculine to help heal our entire globe, our entire culture. So I feel like it's really a great question, and it's really something potent to focus on. So thank you for that question.
Oh yeah. And Hope, you so I know that you are also trained as a midwife, uh, and you played with a band, or I'm not sure if you still do or not, but with Nako and Medicine for the People, which, like you said, had a really you know, a big rise to, you know, a lot of people becoming aware of you all. If you would kind of talk about the connection of, you know, being a midwife, doing in music, and how you found yourself in this band, where, you know, that's not a path that people would necessarily expect. You know, this woman's trained to be a midwife, and now here she is on stage, you know, playing for thousands of people.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to share. You know, again, I unlike the two other women that I'm blessed to be sitting and sharing with right now, I didn't really have music come naturally to me. I wasn't surrounded with a family of musicians. So for me, when I heard it and I was inspired by it, I really had to work at it. I didn't feel like I had natural rhythm. So that was definitely, for me, it was a practice. And it was like I call it a spiritual practice, but it was just a natural thing that I was drawn to doing. And, you know, it was almost like my connection to nature through the drum, you know, like I said, you know, like kind of starting with that like African roots, right? Which I believe they've traced back all of humanity to Africa at this point. It's like a human root. And you know, the Africans use the drum as that way to call to their ancestors. It's this really, you know, obviously ancient, you know, rooted core feeling. And so yeah, so that was a part of my practice, and it was something that I would do on a regular basis by myself or with others. But I never had the intention of being a professional musician. Like I said, I wasn't drawn to be on the stage at all. And it was actually my friends that really drew me out in that way. But so I had already, you know, my origin passion was painting, which I am still a painter, which I love to do. And I feel like I've always had a calling around supporting women and women's voices. And I didn't realize it at the time, but my call to kind of my own spiritual path really led me. Like at 21, I went to India and I studied a little bit with the Dalai Lama and was studying yoga. And then when I came back, I learned about hospice work, helping the dying. And so I did that work, but mostly as a volunteer for like a year, but it was like full time. And then it was one of the women that I was helping that was 89 that died. Her daughter-in-law had been the president of the National Association of Midwives for the United States. And she'd also started the National College of Midwifery and ran it currently. And so after she saw my work helping her mother-in-law, she invited me to be her next apprentice. And so I decided to do that. And I actually had already bought my ticket back to India, but thought, well, actually, rather than just go visit India, I should learn a skill where if I go back to India, I can actually help people and help the women and, you know, have a real hard, essential skill. And so So I cashed in my ticket to pay for my apprenticeship and started that and started studying midwifery. And, you know, my love of, you know, seeing women through that and recognizing that birth is the most intense rite of passage any woman will ever go through. And, you know, they may be in the most intense pain and they will also likely be in the most intense joy of receiving their child. But there's so many feelings, emotions. I mean, it's an incredible ride, and it's a dark night of the soul in many ways. And, you know, I felt myself rise to that intensity of wanting to support women and commit myself and have that level of integrity to stand by women through those experiences. And it really deepened my character, because I was in my late 20s still, which I feel is young for that type of work, but I felt, you know, called to do it. And the truth is there's a lot of need for birth workers. So I was, you know, needed. And so as you know, I was still drumming on the side and actually drumming with African dance groups and things in my free time while I was working as a midwife. But after I graduated and earned my degree and my national certification, I was offered a job at the Water Birth Center in Oregon and Portland. And so that's why I moved out to Oregon.
What year was that?
That was like 2000.
Okay.
So yeah, not long before I met you, Clifford, because right after I got there, I wanted to go to the African drum classes. I wanted to keep drumming. It was still part of my life. And so it was a few years later, it was about 2006, I believe, that I met Nako guys and actually started with that band project. And, you know, in between those two moments, I co-founded an environmental nonprofit where I spent about 6 years helping like teach youth with environmental education and permaculture. I took a break from midwifery after the intensity of it kind of got strong, and I just needed a pause to introspect and reconnect with nature. But at the end of that, co-forming that nonprofit, Nako and Max, the original horn player of the band, had come out to our farm. This nonprofit that we started was an education farm, and in Portland. And
yeah, I heard a lot about it. I don't think I ever actually went there, but I heard a lot about it at the time.
Yeah, it's still there. It's doing its thing.
Can you say the name?
Try on Life Community Farm.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, it's had many phases, and I haven't been there in a while. So it's, you know, I'm sure it's different now, but it had a lot of beautiful qualities and a lot of learning and growth and community. And I had a lot of training about working with community and actually community building. And we used that environmental nonprofit center as a way of doing outreach. And I did a lot of teaching and actually creating our own curriculum of working with youth. And we did a lot of visioning of like how we want to affect the next generation. So it was interesting. After doing about 6 years of that, they invited me to go to, and they flew me out to Zimbabwe and South Africa to be part of a global conversation on global sustainability education. And it wasn't long after I returned from that I met Nako and Max. And so at that moment, I was kind of at this point where I was like, I've done a lot of, you know, helping, you know, birth and deliver the next generation and doing some education around that, but really like reaching more people. I feel like music is an effective tool. And so that was actually the interest for me of getting involved. And you know, when I met Nako, it was such a beautiful message and pure energy. And those gentlemen were very friendly and encouraging of me, because honestly, I was very intimidated about playing music with men. And you know, things certainly changed and the energy shifted as our band grew. But in the beginning, it was such a gentle and sweet energy that that we all came together with, and the message of positive social change was really strong within the lyrics of all of the music. And so it was a really fun collaborative project. You know, Max had graduated from Berklee School of Music, and Nako had a really strong background musically as well. And so it was fun and exciting to collaborate with them. And yeah, we definitely kind of that band, I feel like, you know, there was an intention there of spirit, because we did rise pretty quickly, really an unusual pace for getting to reach as many people as we did with that project. But I think that answers your question, right, Clifford?
Sure. Yeah.
Can't remember
absolutely.
what it was now.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Lacy, for you, well, how did you end up in LA? And what was the process of, you know, either becoming or being a professional musician for you?
So I went through a point in my life where I really wanted to be an actress, like hardcore. So I was already in New York City. Me and my grandmother moved there when I was very young for violin.
How old were you?
I was 11 when we first moved to New
Wow.
York City. Because I did the prep thing for Manhattan School of Music on the weekends. And then my grandmother, I was homeschooled for a while. And then she found LaGuardia High School. Like she figured it out. She's like, well, you have to audition. We have to get you back into school. Are you gonna, homeschool kids tend, there's like a thing with that still. So the audition, she wanted me to do violin, but I said, no, I want to act. And so she got me acting classes. I prepped for the audition. I also told her I'd do violin, but I just decided not to when I did acting. So I kind of I was always playing violin, but really my love was acting. And then after high school, they figured out that I was a fiddle player, so I was typecasted very often. It kind of, that's kind of annoying because this was the thing that I really wanted. But I got past it, and then I decided, well, I'm gonna go to Cal Arts, which is in California. So then in that way I'm around the acting. If I want to do it at some point, I can. But I just knew I'm a musician, really. So,
and so
I did.
Did you study music at Cal? Did acting that you did at Cal Arts?
I did some acting on the side, and I still do it every now and then. But now it's not. Maybe later,
And you've been in LA for 15 years, so that was 15 years ago. And how did it organically kind of lead to gigs and working as a musician? And when did you consider yourself a full-time musician?
I kind of went, I shouldn't say 15 years because I did do back and forth. So I went West Coast, back to the East Coast a few times. Y'all know how it is when you're young. I personally didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that it was gonna be music, but wait, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Just kind of how you became a professional musician. Like, what did it happen quickly? Was it really, was it organic? Was it really you just hustling? And also what was it like? What is it like, especially what is it like before the whole COVID thing, being a professional musician in LA, and how did you get there?
Yeah, I just kind of linked up with people that I knew were doing stuff that I wanted to do, and we slowly became friends. I'm in a group. We tour. We were getting flown in. I played with Avril Lavigne, which was fun.
As a regular band member, or
just a one-off at the Greek Theater. Did a few of those, and just gradually, I built up a rapport, and playing for other artists was the big thing. I toured with a bunch of different people over the years before COVID when traveling was okay. And actually right before COVID hit, I started writing a lot more and doing more studio stuff and realizing like I really love being next to a mic, like just playing and writing, which is kind of a blessing. I actually never knew that I could do that, even as a woman. I don't know if you girls can relate, but I just always thought growing up, like, oh, you can never be a composer. You can never do that. That's kind of what's always been, like, you'll just always be a performer. That's all you can do because you're a pretty girl. Sadly, that's what was kind of hammered into my brain.
And what has the LA studio scene been like, and that between gigs, like what would a week or a month look like for you typically? I
had to kind of juggle between a lot of travel. It was just a ton of traveling. And interspersely, I would go to composer studios and try to fit in those recordings. But oftentimes I was exhausted from traveling. Girls, y'all know traveling is just exhausting.
Yeah.
Have you been enjoying not traveling? And so, what have you been doing since not traveling? Like since the people are staying home and all that?
I'm basically doing the same stuff. I'm doing remote sessions, which has been good. And I'm writing. I'm doing an album. I have two little projects going on at once.
What are
So
those projects?
I hate to be that person. They're like, I'm having such a great time, but I don't know. It was time. I feel like the whole world, I just felt like we were all really stressed out.
Yeah. One of my teachers calls this time the Great Pause, which I thought was really interesting because I think for a lot of people it has been that. I mean, there's yeah, because I like to try to think about the positives, and that's been one for myself as well, and family time and stuff like that. So this is kind of a little shift, but Lacy, what does Star Wars mean to you?
I'm so sorry. Well,
no, you don't need to apologize.
I noticed that. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to how distracting. I'm in a Star Wars parody band. And we actually did a thing recently where I needed to wear that. That's why it's still here.
It looks like the real thing, like real stormtrooper helmet.
I think the guy that got it, he's in the Hollywood industry, so I think it might be one of the real ones. But yeah, we do 90s covers, and they change the lyrics to be it's very cute. Y'all should check it out. It's called Darth Vader.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So I love Star Wars. That's actually what made me want to play violin, like really once I became aware that I was playing violin. That makes sense.
That's cool.
Music, John Williams, oh my God, amazing.
Yeah, and he's still around, and he's in LA, right?
He's still around. I hope I can play with him.
Yeah. So that's a dream. That would be the.
I think that would be it.
Nice. Yeah, Megan, how did you find yourself in Nashville, and what is it like in Nashville?
It's great. So I didn't know. I sort of fumbled through, like, from going back to school and then being in Boston and being like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I feel like this is what I need to do right now. So I just kept going. And then I started getting little inklings like, maybe I should check out Nashville. And I came through here on a road trip one break. And then it just started being clearer and clearer. I don't know, that I was like, I could go to LA, New York, Nashville. I'm from California and I know LA and I don't want to move to LA. And I'm not a city person, so New York, is pretty much out of the question. Boston already pushed me to my limits, and and the vibe here is just a lot more, especially after being in New England. The vibe here is a lot more comfortable. Being from Southern California, it's more laid back. People here are actually nice, so that's a big part of it. And then also, since I started delving into songwriting, this just seemed like a no-brainer too, since this is where so much of the songwriting is happening. And so have
any of you had experiences recently or in the past where more recently I'd say than in the past, but where as female musicians, really I consider you musicians, but you have a perspective that's different than mine because you're female, where either it was a positive or a negative. I'm just curious about your experiences as females and musicians.
Mm-hmm. My experience is probably going to be, I don't know, maybe different from the other girls. I feel like as a set drummer, to me, it kind of has balanced itself out so far. So sometimes people are specifically looking for a female drummer. So that works to my advantage. I have also lost gigs being a woman, either sometimes it's like, oh, I'm pretty sure they didn't hire me because it's all dudes and they're going to be on the road. Or I had one who literally, it was like, yeah, let's do this. And then she was like, the other person in the trio couldn't make it and I had to hire a guy. And so now I have to hire another guy because I can't pay for 3 rooms, so there's definitely things like that. Like, cause I think there are so many sort of men in music still that, you can definitely lose opportunities that way, just not cause they don't want you around or don't believe in you, but just logistically. But for me, I think it definitely balances out because it's still a little bit novel, like to have a woman drummer. So
yeah. Hope, what about you? Any experience?
Such a good question. And it's interesting to try to answer that because it's definitely affected my experience a lot. But again, unlike the other women here, like I wasn't starting as a professional musician first and then, looking for gigs. Like I actually kind of grew into being a professional musician from this band from the ground up and kind of developed into that world with this one band that I was already in from the beginning. So my experience, I mean, I definitely hear you, Megan, on that one about like sharing rooms and stuff on the road. But, like I said, I was already established in the band. So, it would be like negotiating with what guy in the band I wanted to share the room with, like each night for months at a time. And I would kind of like have arrangements with certain of the guys that are a little more like aligned, with personality wise with me and lifestyle wise with me. It's like, oh, what's going to happen in our hotel room tonight on the road? Like, how's that going to work out? And, but overall, I mean, that was really peaceful with our project for the most part. And until we finally got to the point where we had our own hotel rooms, which, was kind of more at the end of my journey with that project. But yeah, a lot of sharing space and a lot of sharing space, in the van, like all men except me. And, men kind of in a different phase of stage of development, maybe than myself, So yeah, and having said that, it was really interesting because I just want to say, we all have had our own experiences, and for me, like, these men that I was with, it was like we were very different. And what was so beautiful about that at times was there like this really strong, youthful, pushing, driving young masculine force was also very inspiring and, accomplished a lot of like moving forward and reaching out and, expansiveness with the music and a very fast growth that, I probably would never have done on my own within my own feminine energy. So I just, I want to honor that piece because I feel like, obviously like the masculine and feminine work very differently when left to their own true natures. And, when we collaborate together, we create different outcomes. And, that was one really beautiful thing about working with the masculine. And then, at the same time, like I feel like the music industry, I, can't help but notice really clearly, like was really creating more space for men's voices to be heard in general. Like we went to hundreds of festivals and I feel like, most of the people's voices being featured and seen and heard were men's, or, again, women that make it to that point, not always by any means, but often are over sexualized and kind of belittled or, seen in a diminutive way, right? Like just like the media kind of just skews things in that perspective. And I feel like as women being on stage, we're often working against that to just be seen as equals and as intelligent, strong humans with, an equal voice in the music industry. And, it's like, there's not necessarily like a place to blame for that, but I do think it's crucial to actually name it so that we as women can understand what we're working with and dealing with and what we've been up against and, how our journey has had to evolve and how our voices have had to grow within that space. And so that we can change it for, again, the next generation of, musicians and our children and the youth. And, I really look forward to seeing spaces where like women are really, heard equally and seen equally and in a balanced, energetic. And having said that, also men are somewhat, manipulated by the music industry as well, right? Because I mean, entertainers are often backed by an industry that makes money off of them, and entertainers can be used, and especially young entertainers, right, that step into this, and there's actually like a music industry machine behind them, right, pushing their own message and their own monetary agenda through them, right? So it's very interesting to kind of like see a little bit of that from the inside out and just say, like, let's all stay grounded and make sure that we're supporting the messages that we want to really hear from our musicians, and holding the industry accountable for representing our culture. And it really reminds me of the first time when I went to West Africa and I studied with some griot community and family from West Africa, and I studied with master drummer Chon Jup and his father Mapate Jup.
I know Chon, yeah.
Awesome. And I love those guys. And just learning, they are healers in their community. They use the drums to heal, and they're griot, and they're born into holding that position. And the griot are, they are respected as they were originally the only ones that could play the drums and touch the drums and play music for the community, and they're born into it. It's a lineage, right? And so they're seen as those that hold the story of the people and the culture of the people. And every politician still to this day has a griot that's a personal advisor. So it's like the musicians are held in such a place of respect that it's really potent to kind of look at that paradigm and then compare it with modern musicians that are famous in our pop culture in America, and how different we are with that when there's a lot of obviously like talk about sex, drugs, and unhealthy behavior that's kind of glorified, right? And that's not the direction we want humanity to be going. So, and again, that's kind of a long answer, but I love that question. And these pieces about the masculine and feminine and the responsibility that we have as musicians when we use our voice.
Yeah, and I definitely have found groups that I've been in that have more balance, masculine and feminine. Is definitely, that energy to me has been more enjoyable, where it's not just all guys or that sort of thing. So I can appreciate how you probably were a counterbalance to the group. And I was wondering, so how did you finally decide to leave the group, and then what did your life look like, or what did you end up doing after that, and then leading up to just before we started dealing with COVID?
Sure. Well, for me, it was a really interesting time because there were a lot of layers to that. It's not one simple answer, but for leaving that project, I was pregnant, and I actually toured full time, across the country and out of the country many times through the pregnancy until I was 6 months pregnant. So, and I bend over my belly to play this cajon. Like I play djembe, but I actually primarily play a bajo cajon. For anybody that knows what that is, like I'm playing that over a 6 month big belly. So, so yeah, it was appropriate timing to step out for that reason, but also for other reasons. The band energetically had shifted into a place where I think that we were not as aligned at that point. And it felt like the right thing, really from spirit, kind of just coming through, like, this is the time to take a break from this project. And, I had started my own kind of side projects along the way because, what most people don't know is even if you're a well-known successful musician, it doesn't mean you're making a lot of money, right? So, so I was, I'd started my own solo album, my first one, and I was already into my second one at that point. So taking this break, and I settled in Hawaii, which is where we'd been touring, internationally, but our hub had been Hawaii for at least 6 years at that point. So I'd grown a big community after leaving Portland, Oregon, on Big Island of Hawaii. So we settled here, and I had my daughter here, and I had a beautiful, healthy, natural home water birth, and which I'm happy to say, and grateful for that experience. And then it becomes really clear as a mom, it's like, what, do you go touring on the road all the time, or do you actually nurture your child? Because it's impossible to do both well, at least while they're young. And for the level of touring that we had been doing, which was 5 to 6 cities a week, and on the bus and on the plane and in the car every single day, like that would not have worked. And it wasn't an option. It wasn't, what felt right for, us. It wasn't on the table at that time anyway. So it just became clear. But what was interesting was, like, I had a lot of friends here on the island that knew me as a musician by that point. And so the day before I gave birth, I was on the dance floor of my friend's birthday party. She lives near me, and she had this awesome DJ at her house for this birthday party. And I showed up, 9.5 months pregnant, and got down a little bit, and we started chatting. And she was like, we need to have a CD release party for you for your next album here on the island to support you as a musician that's not touring anymore. And as soon as she said that, I was like, I love that idea, and I want to make it bigger. I want to honor and create space for more women's voices to be heard, we can expand that idea and make it into a festival that features more women's music and voices. And it's something I had kind of done previously with my last CD release. I had done 2 actually CD release events in Minneapolis and expanded them into an event I created called She Beats, collaborating with the woman Amanda Levac, who's a brilliant organizer there. And we had like 4 dance troupes and 4 different female artists. And then I headlined releasing my CDs there. But so I'd had some background in doing that type of thing. But so we planted the seed the day before I went into labor, had my daughter the next day. And then 5 months later, we had the first Monofest music festival, which now in 2020 would be our 6th one. So my daughter's 5. And it's been awesome, and it's been really amazing. And, you know, the last couple of years we had 28 bands, and all fronted by women and featuring women, though, you know, men are involved in the musical projects as well. We're featuring women's voices. And then we also had like 30 workshops, all, you know, primarily taught by women, some by men, but featuring and honoring like the feminine and women's healing arts and women's voice and creativity and health. And so having those pieces on board, and then also live artists. We've usually had like 4 to 5 at least live female painters. And again, like men have always been invited and included and involved in the volunteer staff and integrated, but it's really was a kind of a reaction to having been, again, to so many festivals and involved in the music scene so heavily, and seeing how men really, you know, well, I would just say that anyone who's given the opportunity on a bigger stage rises to it, you know, 99% of the time. And I saw that in myself when I was stepped out, you know, on a stage in front of 5,000 people for the first time. I was ready to rock. You know, it was like a new version of me emerged the minute I stepped onto that stage. And I feel that, I recognize that. And when the fans are cheering and they believe in you, then you respond and you become better in that moment. And having seen that, it made it that much more clear to me that it's essential that we acknowledge the power of who we offer our stages to, right? Whose voice we give the microphone to, like you're doing today, Clifford. And I felt like, oh yeah, creating a stage and a space where women feel really safe to express themselves and be heard. And everyone who comes to this event recognizes that's what we're doing here. We're honoring women's voices while including the masculine. We're not excluding anyone. It's just really been this beautiful thing that has grown every year and gotten bigger. And people have loved it, and so many men have come up to me and thanked me and said it was one of their favorite events, and like how different the energy feels when women are, you know, heard in this way and together and more empowered. And I also feel like it's strengthened the women that have been involved, all these different hundreds of women that have been a part of it and that we've created jobs for through this project. And that they've also risen, right? I've seen, you know, women's careers grow just over these 5 years that have been a part of it, off and on through the years. And I feel like our platform just helps support each other. And so that's part of my, you know, passion, I'd say, within this, you know, both from my birth work to my music work, is just empowering women, empowering women's voices, and really trusting and believing that when we do that, we help bring a balance for everyone. And it's supportive to men and women everywhere. And it's going to help bring a balance to this culture that's been overly skewed toward the masculine for a little too long now. And I think we all know that. So yes, that's been one of my main projects. And like you mentioned earlier, when I evacuated the lava flow a year and a half ago, I had to go to Asheville, North Carolina, for a year, and I started a new band called Cedar Wing because people there were just asking me to play, and I'm not the one who likes to play solo, and kind of like what you were saying, Megan, it's like more of a percussionist than a singer, but I have been really challenging myself to use my voice and say, you know, I can be a singer, and I do have words, and I do want to say. And actually next month, I'm going to start taking private lessons from the lead singer, Pepper Proud, of Yaima, which is one of my favorite bands. And I've collaborated with them before, and just working on my voice as a woman to recognize that, like, sometimes we've been told we're not a singer, and maybe we are, and we can be. And really, the best singers are not those with always the best voices, right? But there's some with just the most passion. And so just working with that. But so I started this new band called Cedar Wing, and just to say, our album, which we recorded there with a really awesome producer out of LA, is going to be coming out in the next month or so. So it's a 7-song shorter album under the name Cedar Wing. So that's my latest project musically.
Nice. And I can relate to how I have a 3-year-old, so how that's life changing. And I decided not to do touring at all after Riley, my son, was born. And but I found myself, in Nashville, still hustling, where there were some mornings where I would see him for 30 minutes and wouldn't see him till the next day. And so this great pause has been an opportunity to really prioritize and really like move in directions and put the energy in directions that feel healthy and also where I want to be. And so I'm curious for you all how this time is, Megan and Lacy as well, for right now. This, like I said, as my teacher's teacher calls this the great pause.
Lacy,
What do you want to be
take
doing?
I think I needed this, I think. So I'm just taking this time to do my own projects and write, just like I think all of us are.
Mhm.
And I'm losing my voice. I'm practicing a lot of my old concertos from when I was a kid and working on my mental health. I'm getting, I think it's good. I'm playing piano. I'm playing the old stuff that I'd stopped playing, because there was no time with the hustle, with the travel. So.
Mhm.
Yeah. And Megan, what about you?
Nice. Yeah, this time has been a real blessing for me because I kind of coming out of the first year here and just trying to like say yes to everything and follow every opportunity. And I've been, I was trying to really like only do things in music for money. And then with this and seeing like everything that I was working on basically, obviously like died at the same time. And I was like, oh, I was just starting to enter a growth phase. Like this is going to work. And then it was like gone. So yeah, it's been a really good chance to reevaluate and think about like, okay, certain gigs to me, if it's music, does that make it worth it versus is it music that you love, right? So thinking about, well, is it worth having a different side hustle that's not like soul crushing music, and then when I come to play or write, it's going to be just stuff that I love, so thinking about that balance. And I've started, I'm launching a company. I make like natural products, body butters and lip balms and healing balms and things like that. So it's given me a chance to work on that, just because there's a lot not happening right now with music. So working on that and then trying to keep music stuff going as well. But it's been really nice to just have an excuse to have to stop and step on the brakes and be like, okay, think about what you're doing. Don't just fill your schedule with all these things that are like maybe kind of what you want to do, or, just figuring out sort of how to do that and to be a little bit more sustainable as well, financially and just career wise. Like, can I build something here that will actually help me so that, whatever's happening with the industry, I can still be playing music and not be freaking out all the time. So.
Did any of you drop something that you now that you've dropped it, you're surprised? You thought maybe something that you would never, or it would be a long time before you dropped it. Is there anything like that for any of you? I'm thinking out loud and thinking for myself as well.
Yeah.
I think for me, there's just certain things like I said about energy, what I put energy into. Like, wait, I was putting energy into this and I didn't like doing it. Why was I doing it? And so, things. I'll try to think of an example. Okay, so let's try this. We're gonna do a little virtual jam. So surprise! So I've done this with everybody, and so I'll clap 4 beats, and I'll accent the downbeat, and then you all join in with the downbeat, and then you can diverge. You can change your rhythms, whatever. We are all, if there's latency, so none of us should have the same downbeat. So let's just see what happens, and so join in whenever you want. That's hard, isn't it?
It is. That's really weird.
It is.
It's funny. Like recently, I was doing a couple online festivals this last month, and I was like practicing for them, and we were trying to do practices through Zoom, and it was hilarious because of that latency. It was like, we were putting such incredible focus into it. And to say like that's been one of the cool things that came out of this whole COVID thing. I had to cancel some big gigs like on the mainland this summer, but like these online festivals has certainly been a really interesting culture that's kind of emerged out of it. And there's part of me that's not that drawn to like sitting there and watching for very long, but then there's this other piece of just knowing that we can reach people from all over that wouldn't have been able to come or be involved. That's been really beautiful. And another thing I was able to do online was I started this group called like Creative Journey online and did like a 6-week program where it was really beautiful. Like all different people were able to join me for like a weekly thing where we kind of set positive intention and did music and art. So I'm just loving kind of like these online things. In the middle of that though, having said that, like when I was trying to do group drum journeys in my creative journey, recognizing this latency with Zoom is definitely like the last frontier that Zoom guys need to kind of figure out for us musicians to keep using this platform, right?
Yeah. There's something that I experimented with a little bit called, I think it's called Jam Exam or something. I'm saying it wrong, but you're supposed to be able to actually, I think you have a click. Everyone has a click, so they do something where you're at least in time with each other.
But interesting.
What I found for my group on drumming classes, what I did, Hope, and if you haven't tried this, what you can do. So I'd have a track that I play, and then I would be mic'd, and I'd also have my voice mic'd, and then I'd play with the track, and everyone else would be muted. And then they'd unmute themselves if they had something that they were going to share or have a question or anything like that. Yeah, but that worked best as far as. I don't know if you did something like that. Has there been anything else? How do Lacy and Megan, how do you like this online paradigm, and what do you like about it? What do you miss?
I'll start. I don't really like online. A lot of my friends that really know me know that I can't stand social media, but it's kind of become a necessary evil, I guess. And I'm still trying to find the silver lining in all of it. And especially during COVID, it's like very necessary, that we all do it. I think.
Yeah.
But we're all being forced. I think a lot of people I know, and me too, I've learned how to record and like really do all this engineer stuff that I maybe wouldn't have, perhaps learned as, you know what I mean? I think we're being to learn new skills that will help us. Especially as women. That's another thing. How many women producers do we, it's lower percentage, but.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other new skills that you all have worked on since in this time?
I'm knitting, and I've dove into my yoga. I'm a yogi as well. So that's not a new skill though, is it? I guess.
You're getting deeper into it.
Getting deeper. I gotten deeper into gardening. I've been doing a lot. I used to, live on like this permaculture farm, but it's been in Hawaii. I've just been focusing on fruit trees and now like getting vegetable gardens going. And then for these online festivals, it's really interesting because it's like, I've done them pretty much for free, offering, but like, it's so much more work than like showing up in person and like setting up the whole room and setting up the sound and having a whole sound system and then setting up the lights and setting up the stage and then still practicing for your gig and then performing and then actually like, figuring out like how to get online and off like with grace has definitely been a little learning curve that, we learn from in the end. And, I think that these online platforms, though I'm kind of with you, Lacy, it's certainly not my preference over like personal contact. They are obviously really effective and, for large communities, national and global. And so there will be, I think, a blessing to just be practicing them as we all are at this point.
Yeah, I like the idea of eventually a hybrid because we all need human contact. We need community and we need each other. So like I like the idea of a hybrid of like a student that I was traveling across town to see where it took an hour to get to them. If I did that once a month and then saw them 3 times, I'm like, okay, I could deal with that. So I'm into the hybrid idea. Well, I really appreciate you all joining me, and I really enjoyed hearing everyone's story and talking to you all. I just want to just go through the comments and see what people are saying. Donovan Patrick said, Hope is the sacred goddess of the sacred goddess box. Okay, and John Scalisi, who's in Alabama, he does African drumming. He said, great interview, Clifford. And he said, wondered if you'd be interested in talking to some full-time drum circle facilitators. Yes, I would. And Isaac Davis said, yes, Megan. And he put a drum and something else. And Molly Malone said, Squat Man is in the house, which I don't know what that means. Well, yeah, it was really, really good to see you all. If you all would just hang on for 1 minute, I'm going to end the live, but just don't go yet.